Hi everyone, welcome to RPA Explorers channel.
If you guys have watched my previous two videos, part 1 and part 2, where I have explained till how you can create your main activity, in which we have explained how you can initialize it and how you can create your work item. And also in the last video, I didn't show the request content properly. So first let's get started with that. So these are all the items which we created. First let's open it, okay? So here you can weave the name, your status. By default, when you use create work item method, it will be in status pending. And after you process it, your exception type will be marked over here. And in case you have any SLAs, which will be weaved over. And after your process is getting started, you will be able to weave the start and your completed time as well. And this attempt count is basically linked with this particular thing, which is this maximum attempt. So right now I just have only one. So in case you need it, you can also increase it, and according to that you will be able to weave the values if you have that specific logic included in your code. So this is a request content. So this is basically a JSON content. This is the JSON property and the respective value. So the first name says John, last name is Smith, and you'll be able to see all the items whatever we have added. So this is a request content. So once you process it, you will be adding your response content and everything. So now let's see how you can pick this, okay? So before that, we are going to interact with RPA challenge website so that we can actually process the item after we get it. So now after I read my Excel, I forgot to close the Excel in the last video. So let's do that now. After I process everything, I'm just going to close it at the end of the loop. And also let's add a log message that work item has been created successfully. So this is good, and let's save it and we'll close the rest of the thing, and let's have only the main. So here you have process item. So I'm going to process it, before which let's configuring the UAC connector. This is the connector. So let's right click on it to configure. Quickly open Edge and open my website. Okay, now we have it. I think if you have watched my previous video, this is a website where the elements will get changed every time you click on submit. So let's see how we can work on this kind of website. And I'm going to deal with Edge. So let me choose Edge and refresh it. So as I have only one website open, only one page, this is the one. I'll click on it, add screen. So just to simplify the name, you can also change it. Let's say RPA CH page, okay? And you can also play with the match rules or your selectors. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to keep the title should be always RPA challenge, and I'm not going to use my index. So let's keep the URL also if required. You can also change the comparison type. You can also have your regex expression. Okay, now let's start adding your elements. Right click on it, capture element, and now let's start capturing each field. So first let's start with the first name, okay? Just make sure that you press Ctrl and let me click on plus and let's close it. So let me rename this is first name. So here we'll do the changes. Okay, this is done. If I refresh it, it will be highlighted as it is found on that particular on the particular element. Let me click refresh, and if I refresh it now, this will not work as the position of the first name got changed now. So maybe let me refresh it. So now it got changed. So in order to deal with these kinds of website, JavaScript to identify that particular position. So like for example, let me just inspect it. So you can inspect each element individually. So let me inspect first name. This is my first name, and in order to get the field, go to this Okay, here you will be able to see the first name, and also you see that we have some element or the attribute which is called ng reflect name, which says label first name. Okay, now let me refresh it. Let's try configuring the same. So if you see, this name would be still label first name. If I submit it now, this time it's inspect and it's same. So you see that we have different attributes like your reflect name, id, name, class and everything, and now the id is something skv. So let me submit it, and this time let's see the id. So if you see, the id is something which is getting changed, but if you clearly notice, this is something which is always constant. So in order to achieve this, I'm going to use this attribute, okay, which is called ng reflect name. So go to your selector window, and here you have particular match attributes, wherein I'm going to use this attribute ng reflect name, which is equals to. But here the locator says that it is id, but the id is something which is getting changed every time. So let's change to tag name, and now it takes the input from that particular match attribute. If I refresh it, it is able to highlight it. Maybe I'll refresh it. Still it is able to do it, so maybe I'll just highlight it. Okay, now it is getting highlighted. Let's refresh the page. Let's do it again, and this time also it is perfectly working. So this is how you can work with a page which is not constant always. So it's basically that you can use different locator and attributes to get the exact position of it. So here I'm going with a tag name and selecting my correct attribute. So similarly, let's capture all the elements. So next is I'm going to capture my last name. So let's say, okay, and hold control, the control key to stop moving. I'm selecting my last name. And okay, so it got automatically closed. So let me capture it to capture my submit button. So based on the input field you select, the tag will be automatically getting changed. If I go to this, it says that it's an input and it's a submit button plus, and let me close it. So we have captured everything. Let me refresh your screens and elements. It's superb working. If I refresh it, it should not work. Let's give it a try. Yes, except the first name, and submit button is always on the same place, so it used to work irrespective of the position. Okay, now let me quickly go to the tag name and I'll choose what I have to do. Okay, so I have made all the changes. Let me refresh the screens and elements. Let me refresh it and let's try it again. Okay, so everything looks good, and I'm going to click on done now. So now the next step would be adding your element or setting your text on the particular field on the web element, on the web application. So I'm going to choose my connector, which is, so the initialization itself we have launched the application. So here we just have to wait for the page to be loaded. So let me use wait for screen. I'm just waiting for that screen to be loaded, before which I am taking my log activity. Okay, so now I'm just giving some 30 seconds time for my complete page to be loaded. So there are scenarios that it might take more than 30 seconds, so I'm just giving it some time and I'm waiting for it. And if the particular page is found before the 30 seconds, then it will automatically pass to the next activity, to the next component. And now after we load the application, our next step would be getting the item from the queue. So for which I'm going to use this get work items. So now let's choose the screen from here. I want to wait for this screen to be loaded. So once this is loaded, I think this will be returning boolean value, but let's check. So I'm just going to get my work item. Let's also add some filters. So if you want to get any particular name, type, status, then choose it. Now I'm going to choose particular priority. So let's say it should be high, and also I'm going to choose my status. Okay, maybe let's keep just the status. So let's provide the status. It should be in pending. So I want to take my work item whatever in pending state, and this will return me the complete work item. So if I run this, it should give me 11. So yes, 11. And also I'm going to make a decision over here that only if I have at least one item to process, I have to pick it. If not, my pick work item will be failed. So let's add that count is greater than 0. So it should be greater than 0, and I'm passing the count. So if it is greater than 0, I'm going to pick my work item. So let's use this pick work item. And here you have to provide your priority. So I want to pick my work item with high priority and with the status pending. Okay, and if you want to have any additional filters, you can add it. Okay, and here I'm going to get my JSON properties whichever I added there. For example, I want to add my first name, last name and everything. Based on that, I will be applying that to my application. So let's quickly add all the properties. First name, maybe let's add one and we'll test it. Okay, let me keep a breakpoint so that you just pick one and it will be stopping it. Okay, so it is giving us the first name correctly. I'll stop it. And if you go to the queue, I think this particular item is something processed now. Let's confirm. Okay, now it is moved to in progress. So if you rerun the process, this pick work item will not pick this particular item as the status was in progress, but our filter is pending. Okay. Also, you can make use of other available filters as well. And when you are updating your queue item, you need to have the work item ID. So let me create a global variable for that. So let's say new folder and let's rename it to variables. I'm going to create a variable. Let's say global work okay, and now I'm going to map this work item ID. So basically this is the unique ID for each work item. So if you have watched my pick work item video, you will be knowing all these steps. Okay, and also here you will be getting a request item, which is your complete request item, and this will give you each item separately. And now I am going to add all my JSON properties. Okay, so now that I have added everything, so now let's start using this inside the particular application. Start typing your first name. So let's type. Okay, so in real time I would suggest to map this to a different variable and then have a different activity, so you can pass all your variables as input parameters. So in that way you will have separate activity for each of your actions. Okay, so in this example I don't want to take more time to create variables and map it, but you could also do it as I have explained in this log activity. Okay, now I am going to write my first name, right? So let me take the first name and I have to set my text. Like either you can go with send keys or set text. So let me take this set text, and here I have to set my first name. Do the last name as well. So this is the reason I asked you to create a variable. Like it should be more organized if you have variable rather than connecting and doing everything. Okay, and next is phone number. Maybe for the phone number I'll try to create one business exception. So what I'll do is I'll take a decision, and I'm just making some decision before I add it. Let's say that phone number digit should be greater than 9. So basically it should be 10 digits, right? So I'm just validating, and let's do a transform it here. Like we'll take the length and just count. We'll compare with length, if it is greater than 9 or not. Okay, or else you can directly get the length, then you can. So this will give me the length of this particular phone number field, and which I am going to provide it over here. Okay, so if it is greater than 9, I want to add my phone number. If not, I want to throw my business exception. So let's say send keys, sorry, okay, I think this should not be transformed over here as it will affect the true block as well. So let me copy it and I'll disable it, and we'll enable it on the decision block. Okay, this is good now. So if it is false, let's just log it. Let's say then 10 digits. Okay, and also more than logging it, you also have to update your work item, right? So now to update your work item, I'm just going to do that outside of this process work item. Okay, so let's do a update in a different activity. Probably I'll have this as a separate activity, and then we'll do that. So for now, let's create a variable. Let's say maybe a boolean exception. So let's say global variable business exception. This should be of type boolean, so you just drag it and then change the type. That's it, and then you can delete it. So now I'm going to use this after I map it. So I'll say yes, this is a boolean exception. By default, the value for every boolean value is false. So if it is not coming, it's false, that I assume that we will not have any business exception. If we have a business exception, and based on that we could make some decision. Okay, now that we have done everything, and also whether the phone number is a single digit or not, we have to click on the submit button, right? I want to submit it. If you don't want to submit it, you can simply just stop the bot, but I still want to submit it. So let me go to the submit button and let's take click. I am going to map these two. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is that I'm going to create a separate activity. Let's say let's rename this process RPA. Okay, let's say that, and this should be my sub process. So let me add it in my sub activity, and now I have to replace this to be my process and update work item. In the main, instead of this, I'm going to delete this, and let's have process and update work item. And inside this, let me add my pick and process work item. So here what I'm going to do is that I'm just going to have my log message, the log activity, and then I'm going to assign my variable to be false. Let's say that you have 5 items in your queue, and the first item itself a business exception. So when the bot tries to pick the next item, as the value of the business exception is true, it will not process the item if we have a decision. So every time make sure that you reset your values. So here I'm going to make a decision, business exception. Let's have it after we pick it. And also right now what we have done is just to process a single item. For example, in the main we are adding all the items together. Okay, so we have a for loop and it will add each item separately. And here in the process, in the pick and process RPA, what we are doing is we are just taking the get item and the queue item is 0. So it just do the action once, as we do not have any loopings or or any conditions to loop it. So it just process once and it will complete it. So in order to achieve this, I'm going to have some different decisions. So let me copy these two and maybe I'll paste it here. So first, okay, so only if it is true I have to process it, but here I also have to loop it. So now let me remove these two conditions over here. Now in order to loop it, after I get the work item, I'm just validating if at least I have one item. If so, let me process it. Okay, and also here I want to make a decision. So after I make a decision, for each item we also have to update your work item, right? So after I do that, I'll be just remapping to the get work item. So basically I'll be reconnecting it. So in that way, you just take one item, process it, update the work item, and it picks the next work item. I also want to update my status. So in order to do that, after I complete this pick and process RPA, I'm just validating if there are any boolean exceptions or not. Okay, so this has to be mapped to the boolean variable. So let's map to the global boolean variable. So if we have any business exception, I want to update my work item with business exception. Okay, let me say that update work item. So you have to go to the queue method and take update work item. So I'm going to use this. So this has the work item ID, which basically we stored it in the global variable of a pick work item. So this is that, and let me save it. And request content is something like you basically have to provide your request content as well. So let me create a separate variable and store my request content in a different variable. So again, we'll do that in the global one, request content. Okay, and now let's go to this and we'll map that variable. And here it asks us the exception type. So if you go to the static, you have an option to choose application or business exception. Okay, now in my case, this is whenever the value is true, I want to update my status as business exception. Okay, so let me choose business exception here. Okay, this is good. And also here you have to define which status you want to. So it's a failure, right? So I want to mark my item as failure. If it is not a business exception, I think it should be a success item. But there are also cases when you have an application exception. So what you can do is that I'll go over here, and before I start any process, the best practice is to have your try catch or any error handling method. So in that way, whenever you have any error, you can just the try catch can capture that error and you can validate your application exception. So let's go to the toolbox and pick try catch. Let me show you how you can manually throw it, but in real time, whenever it happens, this try catch will capture those errors. Okay, so now whenever there is an error, I want to map that to the particular variable. So let's create a variable and let's say global response content. Okay, and now I want to, whatever value I get, whatever error I get, I just want to map that. Okay, let me change the type to be string. So on error, I want to map it. And also along with this, let's create a one more variable, let's say application exception, to validate. So this is done. So this is basically our response content. Similarly, let's tag the response content for our business variable itself. So I'm going to say the same, that business exception phone number is less than. Okay, it should be less than. Okay, now that we have. Okay, so now we have a common response content, and this response content is common for application, business, and your success work item. And now we have a separate variable to identify the business exception. So similarly, let's create a one more variable which we'll use it for finding our application exception. So let's say app exception. Okay, and this should be turned true over here. So in that way I can differentiate my application, business and success items. Okay, it should be a boolean type. Let me change boolean and let's switch to false and let's make it true. Okay, now this is done. Let's go over here and let's also make this as false. So here I am validating if it is a business exception or not. If not, I have to check whether it is an application exception or not, right? So let me take another additional decision block, and here let's say application exception. So yes, let's, okay, it should be just okay. So if it is false, I am checking if it is an application exception or not. If not, it should be my success item. So in all my cases I have to map my response content. So let me take my response content over here. So this should be my global response content. And for successful item I do not have any response content, right? So I'm not going to map it. So let me take this, and this is for my success item. So here just change your status value, which should be success. So if you have this success, business or application exception, here doesn't matter, so you can leave it as the default one. Okay, so now we have completed the logic almost. Now after you complete all this, let me also take a log message here. So let me connect all these three to the log activity. You can also, log activity is really not required here, but as I have to map all these three to my get work item, instead of doing that I'm just having my log so that I can have a single connection. So this should be to my this one, right? Okay, let's keep it over here and let's say so first bot will validate if we have at least one item to process. If so, it completed, mark the item, and then it start picking up the next item until and unless it have some item to process. So now what if there are no items to process? So if there are no item to process, I'm just mapping some log message. I'm just configuring some log message. Say that no work items with no pending work items found. And also here, if required, you can actually configure your state. Maybe let me try configuring the stage. Let's say that it's a business exception. Okay, if required, you can configure your stage to be your business exception or any other particular constant value you want. Okay, now we have completed the logic. So in the next video I'll be running the whole process, and also we'll complete the end process before we run it. I hope you guys find this video useful. If so, make sure you like and subscribe to my channel. Don't forget to hit the like button to reach more people. Thank you so much for watching this video.